We've got more games coming up tomorrow. The games that we'd usually see on Boxing Day are going to be played on the 27th. One of them is Chelsea against Aston Villa. Chelsea in insane form as it stands right now, as you can see by the graphic here. As for Chelsea, they've won just one of their last 4 league matches. And so here are the predictions of the boys in how this game's going to go down. Mark Ogden and Shaka Hislop have got Aston Villa continuing that winning run, while Nedum and Stevie think that this one is going to end in a draw. So let me start with you then, Nedum. Why are you saying a draw here?
So I've gone that way just because for this run Aston Villa have been on, it's been absolutely incredible. We've seen some great goals and so on. But some of the performances in recent weeks haven't been as good as, say, they were maybe a month or so ago. And, you know, like Morgan Rogers in that last game against United, he scores 2 great goals. But that's sometimes what they're sort of relying upon. So I think that dip in performance, it's gone under the radar a little bit whilst they're still getting the results. But I think that's going to start turning soon in this sort of busy part of the season. I think for Chelsea being at home, I think they'll end up being tough to beat. And yeah, I've gone for a draw, but more than anything, I was actually leaning towards Chelsea. But for vibes, I went for a draw.
Why did you go for a draw, Stevie?
Same as Nedum on Villa. And Chelsea, I mean, they've kind of been up and down really recently. They're due a good performance and a good result in a big game, and so that's why I've gone for the 2-2. I don't see how they stop Rodgers. You know, for me, their Achilles heel, Chelsea, is the back 4 and the goalkeeper, and so I don't see them stopping Villa scoring. So that's why I've gone for the 2-2. I think Chelsea will play well and they'll get after it, but that will also play into Villa's hands and leave some gaps for them to get at that back 4. So that's why I've gone for a draw.
You disagree though, Shaka?
I do. I just think, listen, Villa in the form that they are, and I take Nedum's point about some of the performances, but when you've got momentum with you, there's a self-belief that comes with that. I think Unai Emery and Villa will go to Stamford Bridge thinking that Chelsea may very well dominate possession, but we're as comfortable as ever on the counter-attack, and they are. And Chelsea themselves, despite it being at Stamford Bridge, have this inconsistency about them as well. And then Maresca has to bear some of that blame as well. So just kind of, I'm just looking at the, momentum of Villa and the inconsistency of Chelsea, why I think Villa get the job done.
Is it going to be a good game, Mark?
Oh, I think so. I think it's going to be a really good game. I'm doing the game myself, so I'm looking forward to it. I think the reason that Villa got the edge is that, you know, Maresca said a couple of weeks ago about how he was kind of implying that Chelsea needs some experience amongst the young players, and that's exactly what Villa have got. People like McGinn and Tielemans, and I think in a game like this where, you know, we are talking about, I suppose, the 2 outsiders in a title race of maybe 4 clubs. I just think that Villa have got that experience, that nous, and they've got a better manager. They've got everything that Chelsea are kind of building towards, and I think that Villa have got that full package. But obviously, these runs have to come to an end at some point, and Villa are on an incredible run. But I just think Chelsea are a little bit flaky, and I think Villa tomorrow have just got a little bit more, and I think that's why they'll win the game.
So that is Chelsea against Aston Villa. We'll also be seeing Nottingham Forest taking on Man City. It's 7 wins on the spin in all competitions for Manchester City. They continue to chase Arsenal. They're just 2 points behind them as it is right now. As for Forest, since Sean Dyche came in on October 26, their Prem record is 4 wins, 1 draw and 4 losses. And so the predictions of the panel for this. 3 of you going for a Man City 2-1 win. That's Stevie, Shaka and Nedum. Mark Ogden is going for a 2-2 draw. I'll start with you, Oggy, on why you've got a 2-2 draw here, Forest against City.
Yeah, I just think Sean Dyche has got Forest back to what they were, close to what they were under Nuno. They turned the City ground into a bit of a fortress again. They're playing for him. They're playing the way they like to play. They're full of energy, and I think City have had a couple of difficult trips there in the last couple of years. I think as well, there's an extra factor here. It's 2 days since tomorrow will be 2 days since John Robertson died. One of Forest's all-time great players. So it'll be a very emotional occasion. The fans will be up even more than normal. So I just think it's one of those strange games where I think City will struggle, but that's primarily because Sean Dyche has got Forest organised again, and I think it's a tough game for City.
Nedum, what have you got to say to Oggy about that?
Listen, Oggy has his opinion, usually quite dour, but, I see where he's coming from. I think the emotional side of things with the passing is going to be a big deal. But I think for City, the form that they've been in, I think that'll carry them through in this particular game. It'll be a tough game, being the early kick-off and so on. But I think as well from Forest, yes, it might turn into what feels like a fortress, but they're still very much down in and around the relegation places. So as a consequence, I think in some ways we're sort of overhyping how good they've actually been. And I think Sean Dyche himself, he doesn't necessarily have a great record against Guardiola. You know, in fairness, most managers don't. But I just fancy City to be able to get the job done, but it will be a tough game of football.
Speaking of City getting the job done, Oggy, are they going to get the job done on Antoine Semenyo? Is this going to happen?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we know there's an escape clause in Semenyo's contract at £65 million. It has to be triggered by the 10th of January, so I think it'll be done pretty quickly because Bournemouth will want to get the deal done to get somebody in. So City believe they've got the race won. I think Semenyo's giving them the nod. I think United are out of the running now. So unless something very dramatic happens in the next couple of weeks, I think Semenyo's on his way to City. I don't know where he fits in, but he's on his way to City.
Do they need him, Nedum? Where does he fit in?
I'm not really sure about this one, to be honest, because I do think he's a really good player. But for the way that Bournemouth play, it's very different to the way that Man City play. And some of those traits in terms of how good he can be 1v1, his speed, his strength, his skill, his finishing, that's all really good. But again, it looks different when you're playing against sides who sometimes will be, say, in a low block, something that Bournemouth don't really face on a week-to-week basis. But I think in fairness to City's recruitment overall across the years, it has been very, very good. So they must see some traits in him that will suit this side. And maybe it is going to be out wide, whereas, say, someone like a Semenyo this year overall and Oscar Wilde haven't necessarily been at their absolute best. Maybe here's somebody who can stretch the game in a way which, say, others can't. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he does come in, if other people leave. And as you say, how exactly does he fit into this side, which feels like in some ways it's sort of settling down?
Feels like the former City player, Nedum Onuoha, is not quite feeling it, Stevie.
No, I'm with Nedum. I'm not quite sure myself. I think Grealish is a good example. Grealish was a guy who took lots of touches on the ball and carried the ball forward from the halfway line and committed people. That's not how City played. And yes, he had a good spell, but overall, for 100 million, you'd have to say that it wasn't a success. And so I'm kind of thinking the same as Nedum in terms of Semenyo. He's not a guy that goes at his defender, stops and then plays it backwards. I mean, if there's a team that does that, if there's a team that almost invented it, it's Man City. So, again, he's gone into a side that doesn't play the game that suits him best.
There's some reports out there today, Mark, that the feeling was that Arsenal would have been his first choice had they been firmly in the race. Have you seen those reports?
Yeah, and that's one of those, isn't it? They would say that, wouldn't it, kind of things. I mean, they're not in the running for him, so they're not going to get him, but, it makes them feel good to think that they could have got him. So I don't know where that goes with that. I think, I think it's very hard for Arsenal to say they would have won a race against Man City for a player. No, I'm not having that at all. I just think that's weird.
All right, let's talk about Arsenal then, because Arsenal have got their game coming up against Brighton. We've got the last three results of Arsenal here. You had the 2-1 win over Wolves at home with 2 own goals. There was the 1-0 win at Everton, and that goal was a penalty from Gyökeres. And then, of course, that 1-1 result against Palace in the Cup. It went to 8-7 on penalties. An own goal there as well. Let's get the predictions for the game against Brighton. Shaka's gone for a draw here, even though everybody else says Arsenal are going to win, and quite comfortably. So, Shaka, why do you think it's going to be a draw?
I just think Arsenal have not been anywhere near as convincing as they could or should be. It's been 7 or 8 games since they've won by more than a single goal. And if even you look at that run that we just had up on our full screen. 2 own goals against Wolves. One of those goals coming deep into injury time. The 1-0 against Everton. Everton should have had a penalty. Let's be honest. So easily could be talking about a 1-1 and a draw at Crystal Palace. So I just wonder if Arsenal aren't able to finish teams off in the way that they need to or should be doing. And now, while it's good to see Gabriel Jesus back on and doing as he did, a lot of talk about Kai Havertz and how close he is to returning. I remain unconvinced about Gyökeres. So all those things kind of put together, I just feel Arsenal may dominate possession, but Brighton are a good team, and I'm not sure that they get the better of Brighton in the way that they did Wolves for bottom of the table, and the way that they struggled to and didn't against lesser opposition than Brighton.
But you think it is going to be their day, Nedum?
Yeah, I do, to be honest. And I think the lack of goals that have been scored in recent weeks hasn't necessarily been down to, say, lack of chances created. Maybe the finishing has been off, but I think for the quality players that they have in time, that will balance itself out. And I think against this Brighton side, like Brighton, we tend to remember the best version of them. But so far this season, we've seen a very inconsistent one, and at times quite a poor one, relatively speaking. So I think for Arsenal being at home, you know, I've had that little Christmas boost, a couple of days off, and they're ready to go again with some new faces, adding some competition in training as well. You've seen the likes of Havertz, Gabriel Jesus back in. I think that will make a difference, and I think Arteta's going to have more sort of attacking options going forward because, you know, for the last game we had Eze on the bench, for example. Maybe this is the Eze game, and maybe this is the one where Gabriel Jesus gets off the mark again. So I'm confident they'll win this game, and I think they'll win it by a few, yeah.
Okay, so let's get to what the Kai Havertz situation and what Mikel Arteta's had to say about it. He said it will be a matter of days, not weeks. This is his return, obviously. Let's see in the next steps how he responds to that. Kai is a player that we missed a lot, a player that brings the team into a different dimension. Oggy, what happens when he comes back with Gyökeres?
Well, I mean, I was at Everton last week when Gyökeres scored the penalty that won the game at Everton, but you know, he doesn't offer much, really. You look at who he scored against this season, it's Everton, it's Burnley, it's Leeds, it's Nottingham Forest. He doesn't score against the top teams, and I think he's not really been what Arsenal wanted. And I think Havertz, at least we know, he's got flair, he's got talent, he can move people around. He's not prolific, Kai Havertz, but he's a better player than Gyökeres, and I think that's the problem that Gyökeres has got. I don't quite know what he is. He works defenders, he's a physical presence, but he's not really what has made Arsenal any better. So I think when Havertz is fit and ready to play, he'll go ahead of Gyökeres because he offers more. I just think he's a better player.
Stevie?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but were we gushing over Kai Havertz before he got injured?
Nope.
I don't think so. So all of a sudden, because he's been out for so long and his manager's talking about I mean,
He's got to take them into a different dimension.
Is Star Trek? If he was in Star Trek, it'd be all right. But I mean, seriously. I mean, we're all talking about Havertz like he's not a centre forward. They're struggling. He's got to play him centre forward. Where does Havertz play? Does he play the number 10? Does he play off? Is he
in another dimension?
In another dimension, clearly. So unless he gets there, I don't see what all the noise is about.
So you think Victor's going to be fine?
He doesn't make them better. Gyökeres, no question, hasn't so far done really what he was bought to do, but he looked as though he was beginning to, and then he got injured. So I think it's a little early to just write Gyökeres off. Yes, we all thought he would do a little bit more, but yeah, to turn around and start talking about Havertz as if he's like the second coming, I don't think so.
The theme of the show today seems to have been Stevie and Nedum agreeing on many a thing. Do you agree with Stevie here, Nedum?
Do you know, just for the vibes, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to say for Havertz, yes, he wasn't necessarily doing brilliantly before he got injured. But again, for Arteta, it's a different type of option. I think at times, Gyökeres, he's more of like a battering ram as such. You know, you see, say, where it's come from Sporting, say, some of that time in the English Championship, and you can see the effect that it has in terms of how they play. But I think for Havertz and Gabriel Jesus and others, you know, there was a critique that they didn't score enough goals. But then they're also part of Arsenal sides which went on long runs of like winning games of football. You know, there was a point, I think it was 2 seasons ago, where they got to 50 points at the halfway mark in the season. And that's because of people like Havertz and Jesus and alike. So I think for him to have the options, that's going to be important because not every game of football between now and the end of the season is going to be played against a side who play in a particular way. But I think maybe, if anything, it'll be a positive for Gyökeres because he'll know he'll have to perform now because the manager will have 2 people at times on the bench who he trusts explicitly. So yeah, it'd be nice to see him back in good health and in good health for a long period of time because, you know, Arteta very much trusts him.
You get the final say on this situation, Shaq.
I disagree with Stevie in that I think Stevie's kinder to Gyökeres only because he's been there for less time and it's a smaller sample set. Had Kai Havertz put together these kinds of performances that we've seen from Gyökeres, and I'm with Mark on this, I am unconvinced about Gyökeres, have been all season long, and his value to Arsenal. There's credible argument to be made that Mikel Merino is a better servant in that position, and he's not even a striker. So while, yes, I get the criticism of Kai Havertz dating back from his Chelsea days into Arsenal, I still feel that he has been, over the same period that Gyökeres has been at Arsenal, he has been more effective in that sample size at any point of his Arsenal career. So him coming back, I think, is a step up from Victor Gyökeres.